In this video, we'll be talking about interval notation, a way to express information from a number line. So first, let's talk about a set. A set is a collection of numbers. So if we have the set A, and it contains these three values, -3, 5, and 7, we would read this as the set A contains -3, 5, and 7. And this is the way that it would be written with these curly braces. Okay, so in this example, example 1, let's try to express the set A on this number line. It would simply be expressed with these filled in circles. So there would be a filled in circle at -3, 5, and 7. And so a filled in circle represents that value is in the set. Okay, in example 2, let's say we have a set B and it contains these values. Okay, which values are they? It's -6, 1, 4, and 7. So inside our set, we would have these values. So B would equal -6, 1, 4, and 7. So that's how we would do a few finite values. How would we express many values, like many, many, many? So if we had x is larger than or equal to 3, x is greater than or equal to 3, we would want it to fill in, we would have to put, closed circles on every single point. Every single point between here. I mean, every one of them. Infinitely many, and there's so many. And so what does that look like? That looks like we're kind of shading it all in. So it would be everything shaded here. In fact, that's what this is. If you could see underneath this thing that I've drawn, we put a bracket on 3 and we shade all the way until we get to the end here, which is represented as 10, but we have an arrowhead there, and that means it continues to go forever. So everything is larger than 3. Everything that's larger than 3. So 11, 12, everything would be included. And so we use a bracket because a bracket is signifying, or that's denoting inclusion. So a bracket means that we're including the endpoint. A parentheses would indicate that we're not including the endpoint. So in this example, we have x is less than 2. So it would simply be all the values below 2 are shaded. Okay, and then it's an arrowhead here which is bolded, so everything that's less than 10, -10 also, like -11, -12, -1,000,000, -1 trillion, everything over there. And at -2 we have a parentheses because we don't include -2. You see, -2 would not be included. And actually, I think it was supposed to be -2, actually. So, yeah, I'm sorry, this is a mistake. This should be a -2. And again, our parentheses denote inclusion. I'm sorry, a bracket denotes inclusion. A parentheses denotes it does not include that. So that's why we use parentheses there. If there was a line under this, that would mean less than or equal to -2. And so equal to would also be okay. -2 can equal, does equal, in fact, -2. So we would put a bracket there, but here we would not put a bracket. Okay, so now this question, it gives us the number line, and we would have to say what it is. Okay, so it goes all the way from everything way less than negative, way less than -10, like -11, -1 trillion, and it looks like it goes up until 4 here. So in interval notation, it would be -infinity to 4. It's a different way to denote that. It's called interval notation. And so with interval notation, what we do is we look at our endpoints. And so here on the left, there's not an endpoint. It goes all the way to -infinity. So that's what we put here. It becomes arbitrarily negative, like all the way, everything over there. So -infinity, so negative like forever, until we get to 4. and we're not including 4. Now we always use a parentheses with infinity or negative infinity. Okay, so that's a reminder about that. Now in this example, in interval notation, it looks like it goes from negative 7 to 4. It looks like it includes negative 7. So in interval notation, we would say that it goes from negative 7 to 4, but we use a bracket here. And we use a bracket because it can include negative 7. And so it's really just, it uses a bracket here, so we use a bracket there. It uses a parentheses here, so we use a parentheses there. But this means it does not include 4, so 4 is not allowed, but it's everything to the left of 4, you know. And then over here, it's negative 7, and we can't include negative 7. Okay, so in example 5, how would we denote this? In interval notation, it would be negative infinity until we get to negative 3, and then it's 0 to infinity. So we just go from left to right. So if we look at our endpoints, over here we have negative infinity, okay, and over here we have negative 3. So it goes from negative infinity until we get to negative 3. It does not include negative 3, so that's where these parts come from, okay. And then we have a break, so we put a union symbol, okay. This means that there's some sort of a break and we're tying these two things together. And then we start at 0 again. We're not including 0, so we use a parentheses, and we go all the way until we get to infinity. So, you know, here's 0, and here's positive infinity, so we go all the way until we get to infinity. Which, I mean, I say until we get there. We never get there, okay. It's not one value. It's okay, so applications that this is used for would be like this. Okay, so if we have this inequality, to solve this, we would add 7 to both sides, so we have 5x minus 7, but we have to add 7 to both sides. Okay, so then minus 7 plus 7, that's 0, so that's gone. So now we just have 5x is bigger than, here this is 20, and we would divide both sides by 5. So then we get x is bigger than 4. So on a number line, what that would look like is we would have 4, okay, and I'm sorry, it needs to be an open circle. So I don't know if I can erase this. Oh, there is an eraser. Okay. So we would have an open circle here, okay, and then we want to do everything that's larger than 4. So everything larger than 4. Okay, and so that's what it would look like on a number line. Okay, now that we know there's an open circle there, that means we're not including it. So we would put a parentheses. I always usually like to just put an open circle first because I don't know which direction my parentheses is going to go. And then at the end I'll say, okay, well that's a parentheses. So now in interval notation, the answer would be 4 to infinity. And so that's the solution for this. That means x can be anything in this interval. Okay, it can be anything in this interval. It can be 5, it can be 12, it can be, you know, 167 over 2. It can be anything in here, but, you know, it can't be 4 because 4 is not in this interval.